All right, we're back for another holiday chat, and I've got Egon here on the line with me. Merry Christmas, Egon. How are you?
Merry Christmas. Hi, Dave.
So let's start off with the type of business that you want to talk about.
Been looking at a hospitality business. Been in the hospitality industry, so to speak, for about 7 years with a cottage rental. Been looking to purchase a cottage business, a larger between 7 and 15 units. And we've been having a hard time finding any businesses anywhere around Halifax within about half an hour, 45-minute drive.
Okay.
So we think we found one, and we hope that this one will work out, but the numbers don't seem to show that.
Okay. So let me ask you a couple questions. Number one, the cottage rental that you have now, is it one single unit you rent out?
Yes, it's one single unit. It's basically our trial run. We've been doing everything from beginning to end, including cleaning. So we wanted to see and get the experience to know how much it actually takes, how much work it takes to run an operation like that.
And are you using platforms like Airbnb to rent it out?
Yes, we use all the platforms available, and we
Okay.
usually have 100% occupancy throughout the summer on average, except for 2 years ago.
In the height of the pandemic and everything.
That's right. Yes. So as soon as they shut down Atlantic Canada, basically lost out on customers. Yes.
And so let me ask you, how much time does it take for you to manage that one unit?
Well, we do it on the weekends because we work full time. So it takes about, with the pandemic in full swing, it took about 5-6 hours for two people to manage that on the weekends on average.
And so you're typically only renting it out for a full week, is that right?
That's right. So we have a 5 to 6 night minimum depending on the month. So early June would be 5 nights, then July, August, early September would be 6 night minimum, just to make it worth our while.
Okay. And so can you describe then the business that you found?
So the business that we found is a fully operational business within about an hour of Halifax.
Yeah.
So it would be close, I'd say about half an hour for us to drive to get there. That's what we're looking for. It is a prime location, so it's a Class A type location. It would have oceanfront or oceanfront access, one of those two. It would have at least 6 to 10 units. So that's the type of business with potential to increase the units as well.
And so is it just a bunch of cottages together that you could manage in the way that you're managing your one unit now? Or is it more like a business where there's like a reception and some kind of common facilities that the cottage users share?
It would be individual cottages. That's the goal. That makes it easier to manage because then you can go from one to the next and not disturb other guests. That's the best option.
Okay. So this opportunity you're looking at, it's just the same as what you have now, but more units.
Correct. That's right.
Okay. And you had done up something that you shared with me. I'm going to share it on the screen because you've made it anonymous. So this is using some kind of real estate investment analysis tool, is it?
Yes, it's an app I have on my phone that gives me a quick 10-minute way of analyzing any properties. So I think the name of it is at the bottom of the presentation or the printout. So
okay, so they want 2.2 million is the asking price.
Yes.
And then you have a net operating income calculated out here, and it summarizes some other information here. But I want to talk more about some of the assumptions that went into it. So you're looking at this 2.2 million purchase price, a first mortgage of 900,000 and a second mortgage of $1 million. What do the bankers say when you talk with them about these kinds of investments?
Well, the real estate that sits behind it should justify the purchase price, obviously. So when the appraisal time comes and we get the bank to look at the financing, we definitely have to come in of a loan to value ratio of under 65, right? So the way calculated is it seemed to be around 45 to 50, depending on the final purchase price. But it seems like, so the first mortgage would be with a bank that you see there
Mhm.
at about maybe 3% over 30 years. Ideally, I know that that's hard to get, but if there's a backing by real estate, that might be a bit different. So I don't have the answer from a bank yet. I'm still waiting to hear back from them because it has to go through a different channel than a regular um, um, person at the bank. So they had to reach out and they're gonna find out from me if that's possible. The second mortgage is basically a blended one. It's interest only and it'd be a vendor take back mortgage.
Okay. So did the person at the bank give you any indication of what kind of term?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
No, I don't have that yet. Unfortunately, my guess was 5 years.
Okay. And so for people who listen to this afterwards, a lot of them are in the States where you can get a 30-year fixed term mortgage where you just pay the same amount over 30 years. But that's not the case in Canada. You can get a 30-year amortizing mortgage, but a 5-year term means that at the end of the 5 years, your contract is up and you have to renew given the conditions of the day. So if interest rates go up, it means in 5 years' time, you'd be renewing at a higher rate. So some of the assumptions we're making here about the long-term value and cash flow, et cetera, fall into question after the 5th year.
So the plan was to get a 10-year mortgage at a
Mhm.
fixed rate to ensure that for at least 10 years, you have the same cash flow.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about this. You've got it broken down into monthly income, but is it realistic to get the income year round? What's your experience been with your property?
So the numbers you see there right now is the current annual per season, means 4 to 6 months, depending on the weather and the year. Okay.
Okay.
So what I did is I used that same number and I broke it out to work with the purchase price and the mortgages to be able to service my debt. Okay. So
Okay.
if the current number does not give me enough money, I can't create the blue sky in order to move on and generate additional revenue. Okay.
Okay.
So I watched enough of your videos to know that whatever is currently being made in the business needs to at least carry what you purchase. So that was my assumption. Okay. That's what you see there. You're correct. It's not a monthly,
Okay.
but based on how the app calculates it, that's a quick way for me to see that does it actually cash flow enough and does it give me enough money to pay for this every month? Because from a vendor take back perspective, we haven't negotiated the terms yet. There might be interest monthly, might be interest, every 6 months. So depending on that, I need to be sure that every month carries the business.
Okay. And so then I'm going to lean more on the annual column.
Okay.
But before we're finished, we're going to talk more about the monthly cash flow. So vacancy loss is an assumption about how many empty days you're going to have over the course of the year.
That is correct. Yes.
But are they booking $300,000 right now?
Yes.
So their revenue already takes into account some of the vacancies they have.
That is correct.
Okay. So this is kind of like a buffer then.
Worst case scenario, correct.
Okay. And then I see cleaning and maintenance. Is this a person working for you full time, or what does this look
So
like?
everything, because I didn't want to go into too many details because it gave away what the business is. And I know we have an NDA, so we can't really break out the details. But everything you see under expenses is everything. That's salaries, that's maintenance, that's any cost that comes up as a contingency for any repairs, landscaping, everything is included in the expenses. So that final number that you should really look at is operating, and that is just for the season. So right now there is a shutdown cost, and there's also an opening cost,
Mhm.
and there's no numbers right now to justify a year-round operation. So I can't generate 356 days a year a number that would make it, like I said, it's a blue sky number. So I can't come up with that right now because I don't know till I do it.
Right. So, but the one thing I wanted to make sure of is that the commissions or fees from the booking sites are included in here.
They are all included. Everything you see there as an expense is included in that number. Yes.
Okay. And so when I get down here and we're looking at the financial metrics,
Mhm.
we get a cap rate of 5.6%. Have you spoken to any of the real estate appraisers in the region about?
No, I have not yet. No,
Okay.
because it's so new, and we just received the numbers not too long ago. So I haven't had a chance yet. That's why I wanted your opinion first before I go out to any appraisers.
Well, I mean, very, very quickly,
Mhm.
traditionally, for example, a motel would sell for 8 to 12 times EBITDA, depending on whether it was flagged, meaning it had a brand name, and how nice it was, state of repair, etc. So we don't have EBITDA on here, but your net operating income is pretty close to EBITDA, although it doesn't really take into account your time as far
Correct.
as
So I
managing.
do have the other numbers as well, just so you know. So I followed your SDE is not cash flow video,
Yeah. Okay.
and I do have some of the numbers. So just so you know, so net income wise, approximately, it's a rough number. It's about 35 net earnings, 35,000. Cash flow then is the same because we are not aware of any depreciation or debt repayments. So we assume it's the same. And then EBITDA would be about 80. And then sales discretionary earnings about assumed that we have an owner salary of 100, would be about 180. So EBITDA of 80, that's basically, that is net earnings of 35 plus the taxes of 45,000. It's very rough, but that's what I have right now. And the
Okay.
taxes are not in your numbers that you see there as an expense because I already deducted them to be able to ensure that cash flow works.
So you're talking about property taxes.
No, I'm talking about GST, HST.
GST and HST, though, the sales taxes, they're not part of the company's expenses, though. Does this $300,000 of revenue include their sales tax?
No, it doesn't. No.
Okay, so the sales tax just flows through
Okay.
for a business like this because short-term rentals, you're charging sales tax, correct?
Correct.
Right. So you're going to charge that money on top of the rate, and then you just send that money to the government. So
Yeah.
it's not actually an expense to you. You're just a steward of that money when it comes in, and you send it off.
Okay.
And then things that you spend tax on, like if you bought a bundle of shingles and paid tax on it, that just gets netted out. So tax isn't really a factor here. But what you're saying then is, if I look at the net operating income of 123,000 a year, if we factor in your time, the EBITDA is closer to 80. Is that correct?
No, it'd be 35 then. Took the wrong number. Sorry.
The EBITDA would be
35.
30.
It would be 35,000.
Okay. So the 35,000 is the level of cash flow before income taxes, before any depreciation or
Yes.
amortization. And
Yeah.
it takes into account the fair market value of your time. You said that you valued that at 100,000, right?
That's right. Yes.
So but is it going to be like, to me, $100,000 is like a hotel manager's salary on a year-round property.
Okay, let me see. So the plan was, I just used 100,000 because of the number that I saw, but the
Hmm.
plan was for the wife to manage it part-time. Okay, we
Okay.
do have employees, or we would hire employees. We plan to hire a full-time manager, so to speak, and then a couple of part-time cleaners. So we don't want to run the business ourselves.
Okay. And so she would be a part-time manager?
She would be part-time managing the business. That's right.
Okay.
So the
And so,
expenses you see there include all those salaries as well.
okay. So after you covered all those salaries,
Mhm.
and what would you be paying her for her part-time effort over the 6 or 7 months of the season?
About 20.
Okay. So to me, that sounds like a fair market value for the amount of time and the length of the season. So then if the EBITDA is only 35,000,
Mhm.
and we're talking about a $2 million investment, well, my calculator died earlier today. The battery died. Um, we're talking about like,
Yes. This is a
I have a
rock.
calculator on my phone.
So
So, so
420 times 12.
divided by 35,000, it's a 62 times EBITDA.
Yes.
Yeah, I know my brain kept rejecting where it wanted to go
Yes.
because the
Same
number was
here.
so high.
Yes. Same here.
So, so then really here's the problem is
Mhm.
that if you're talking about a coastal property with coastal cottages, and
Mhm.
these are all individual cottages, then the problem is are there some people out there who might be interested in owning these, who might value these cottages collectively at 2.2 million?
Correct.
Because it could very well be that their value as real estate, oceanfront cottage recreational real estate, simply exceeds the value of the cash flow they're able to generate. And this would not be an uncommon problem in this category.
Okay.
Like I see this a lot and I mentioned before in other videos and stuff, businesses like bed and breakfasts, fly fishing lodges, other types of things like that, where um, people will buy them and own them as a lifestyle business. And I think there was probably a correct time to get into this business where you could, the land hadn't appreciated that much, and you could buy the land and build the cottages and have a more in line with that motel valuation I mentioned.
Yes.
But what has happened since is that the value of these properties has just soared, because of the scarcity and of, you know, you're talking about pretty close proximity to Halifax. So not
Yeah.
only would there be demand from people from Halifax to have a recreational property here, but it is an easily accessible airport for people from like Toronto and stuff, right?
Okay. So just to give you an indication of how much replacement value would be based on current prices,
Sure.
just went up. We came up with a number of about $3 million.
Yeah.
So from a real estate land and property perspective, you're right. The value is not in running a business. The value is in actually having a property. So we've been running two other scenarios. So one is the scenarios you just described, which you basically turn it into condos, or you create a cooperative and you find buyers who are interested in moving there and running it together. And the third option would actually be to rent it. So seeing what people are willing to pay, who just may have sold their house out west or in Ontario, and they don't want a place they have to be somewhere in the city.
Mhm.
Right now, a place like that potentially could rent for $3,500, all included. That'd be power, internet, everything. So
Yeah.
at $3,500, that would be over 12 months, full time. That'd be a bit over $300,000 in rent.
And so what we're talking about then here is we're talking about our redevelopment. We're talking
Yes.
about, hey, these properties likely are worth more closer to 3. We can get them for 2.2, but the way it's being operated today, it doesn't make sense as a business.
Correct. And
Yeah.
that's what we're looking at, and that's why we're looking at it. So we've been running around trying to figure out what the right scenario is. I looked at the your scenario where you say, well, create a master lease contract, basically lease them out for a year, operate them, see how you feel about it, and then you can either walk away and hand it back or just decide on the purchase. So then we obviously we have to get the option to purchase as well, and we know that the owners want out as soon as possible, which it's already hard to negotiate a vendor take back for 5 years. That was almost too long for them. So that is a problem as well. So the only way to do that would be to make them happy, would be to basically take ownership or get ownership of the property with the option to purchase in a year. Basically prove, well, we feel that we can't prove that there's more money to be made in it, even if you run it full time, because that's just going to take up more expenses on the power and internet and so on side. So it's hard to justify all those extra expenses for a bit of extra money. It didn't make sense either.
Mhm.
The condo is one part, the rental is the other. We just don't feel that the condo part is good either, because then we'd lose the property, and we'd rather get the rents. I just don't know if that's a right way to think about it.
So let me get this straight. The two scenarios you're thinking about are either to acquire it, to rent them out, and you're talking about seasonal, short term, and longer term over the winters.
Full long term.
Oh, okay. Just turn it into 12-month rentals. That removes
Right.
all your cleaning
100%.
costs related to trying to get tenants on Airbnb and things
Right.
like this.
You just need landscaping and clearing in the winter time.
Okay. And so, yeah, and then the other option is to buy it, condominiumize it, and sell off the pieces.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
right.
So there's no reason why you close the door to number 2 if you try number 1 first.
Okay.
Right. And so here's the thing though, is that when you present this to the banker, you're going to have to present it almost like it's going to have to be presented in a new way. Like the bank's going to want to know about the leases that are in place. They want to verify the income under your plan. And right now that income doesn't exist.
Correct.
Right. So the people who want to sell, they want out as quickly as possible. You mentioned a master lease arrangement. Did you, and that was a story that I had told at one time about a motel that I helped sell.
Correct. That's right.
And the buyer did a master lease to take over the property. He renovated all the units. Then he was able to get it reappraised at a higher price, got a mortgage paid for the motel at that time.
Correct.
So have you spoken at all to them about, because really all you need is enough time to rent up a bunch of them. Even if you got half of them rented, you'd probably be able to demonstrate to a banker that this is a viable thing for you to do as far as the cash flow. Or do they need work before you could rent them out long term?
So that's the nice thing. They wouldn't need any work. That's what we've been looking for. That's also hard to find. We looked at others before, and most of them need work. But right now, there's actually multiple that don't need work on the market. So it's unusual to find, which is why we seriously started looking at these. So okay. So my plan was, if we rent them out, my only problem is how to convince the owners to allow us to do that. That's one big hurdle we see. because the owners are not willing to provide 100% vendor take back. And they are very interested in seeing the operation continue the way it is currently being operated, which is
They don't want it to change.
they don't want it to change. We have not discussed with them any changes as of yet, because we wanted to look at other option. I want to talk to you first as well.
Yeah.
So this is a hard sell, because they're very proud of their business. Now we understand. It's just that we don't see how we can make it work with that purchase price and those numbers. It just doesn't seem to ever work out, no matter how many things we cut, no matter how much work we take on extra, which we don't want to buy an extra job.
Mhm.
We already have jobs. So most people don't build that in from the beginning. We want to build that in from the get-go. We don't want another job. We want to own a business and run a business. So ideally it frees up time in 5 years after we pay back the vendor his amount after the agreement runs out, right?
How close are you to the seller?
We know each other. We've known each other for a while. And we spent some time together, and they know we're serious. So that's one thing we've definitely demonstrated. And we've been in touch every couple of weeks just to let them know where we are and where we think we can take it. We already said no once, just so you're aware of that. So we said the numbers don't work exactly for the reason you said earlier. It just doesn't seem to be a good investment in a good business. It's just that every business owner who has real estate behind it thinks that the value is in the real estate.
Well, that's because they paid for it a long time ago and they didn't pay this price.
Correct. That's right.
Have you done a cash flow forecast looking out into the future? I mean, I know there's one here attached to what you had sent me. Have you sat down with them to show them what it would look like for you if you paid this price?
No, I have not done yet. This is the first time I'm sharing it. So this is the first one I did for this meeting here. So no, they're not aware of this yet. And we will have to show them this soon, just to make them aware of the fact that it just doesn't work for someone to pay that amount in order to own that business.
Because one of the strategies that I've advised people, and it's based on what I've seen in the past, but it's also based a little bit on that book, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, the negotiating book, is when you show somebody what the numbers really look like, you say, well, I'm having trouble figuring out how I make this work, and maybe I'm missing something. So you ask them how they would make it work, right?
Good approach.
And they would probably realize pretty quickly that if they had the kind of mortgage payments that you're talking about, if they had $85,000 a year of mortgage payments to make, plus they had to make another $24,000 of capital improvements this year.
That's right.
They'd probably realize that their business wouldn't be that viable.
Correct. Yes, and I think over the years they also created a lot of debt capital. There's a lot of investment that that hasn't been paid back yet. The business hasn't been, after the investment was done, the business hasn't been in operation long enough to justify that. So now that they're ready to retire, it's basically, I'm trying to get all my debt capital out that I haven't realized yet. So that's why it's so much over, the justifiable number. That's what we suspect.
Okay, so keeping it as it is, it's not very viable. You can demonstrate that to them. They probably won't want to accept that, but in my experience, sometimes people react emotionally and then later they come around logically and realize that what you're saying is true.
Okay.
As far as getting them to agree to let you have the property or get control of the property. You don't necessarily have to go through the paces of having a master lease and doing all that kind of stuff. What you can do is simply have a little bit of a stretch to closing, and then you can go and advertise the property and sign leases.
Okay.
Right? They need to be on board in case the deal doesn't come through, that they're going to want to lease out, the units or whatnot. But if you say if you show them that this doesn't work, but here's our plan, and in order for the bank loan to be approved, we need to get some leases signed before closing day. So this is why I need 4 months to close, or
Understood.
something like that. Right?
So here's my challenge with that. The next year's season has already been started, which means that bookings exist. Canceling those bookings is probably not the right way to finish off a business or hand over a business, because that's also something that was probably built into the price. It's not specifically mentioned, but it's probably already part of the blue sky arrangement, so to speak.
Well, this annual revenue that you're showing on the paper that you sent to me is actually just the seasonal revenue, right?
Correct. Yes.
So the busy months are not going to be 25,000 a month. They're going to be more like 35 to 40-ish in the busy peak
Correct.
season.
That's right. So yes. So the season next year, even if we take it over and then complete the season, means we basically go to the last day of every booking that currently exists. And then as we move through it, as units are available, free up and become available to show to potential clients to lease out full time, then we just move into the next season in the winter with full-time leases.
Yes. Well, there you go. That would be a plan that would make sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And up here in my neck of the woods, a lot of these weekly cottage rental places along the beaches and the coast here, they will, what they charge per week in July, they charge per month in the fall. Yes. And then in the winter, they even charge less and get, people like construction workers and people who are just like in transit through the area working on projects and stuff, they'll rent them even cheaper in the winter. But it makes more sense to keep them open and heated versus winterizing them, closing them in for the season. And
that's correct. Yes. Yeah. Right. In most cases it does.
Yeah. So now here, let me ask you this other question. The property, do you know is there zoning control in this area?
There is, yes. Okay. The property is already zoned accordingly. So it's a mix. There's an owner's unit, and there's a commercial side to it as well, which is the cottages.
But is it zoned? Like, could somebody come in and tear down all the cottages and put up like a multi-story condo oceanfront property?
That is a good question. I don't know that. I have to look into that. Okay.
Because, and this is one of the reasons why I ask how close are you? Because if they want to sell to you and you show them that, it can't be this way, it's got to be this way, etc. If they then go talk to a real estate agent who says, oh, you know what, I can sell this place for 2.2 million, no problem, because someone will come and put a $15 million building here.
Okay.
Right. And so the options for the seller, like the relationship is key, because you want them to believe that you're the best option to carry on the business.
Understood. Okay. Yes.
Right. If you have to make the best proposal you can to try to entice them to do this deal. But if that possibility exists of, some big fish coming along who can just write a check for these millions to develop it into a huge, huge project, then you get marginalized anyway. So,
understood.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just just to summarize a bit. So currently, it does not make sense to purchase these properties at this asking price. Clearly, there are options to run them full time, but I don't know yet what the actual revenue is going to be in the wintertime, and I also don't know what the costs are actually going to be to operate them in the wintertime and have an open. So those are two. That's a lot of potential risk there, and that could erase a lot of revenue. And like you said, wintertime is slow, and we probably would pay more to keep them open than to actually make when we rent them out. That's a possibility for sure. Moving into full-time rentals is definitely an option. The only problem I have with full-time rentals like this is, what would I actually? I'm used to. I had residential properties about 7 years ago, and I have a hard time finding anything that compares in prime real estate, because it's not a condo downtown, it's not a high rise anywhere, it's not on a golf course, which is where most of these units are. This will be a bit different. So I have a hard time finding any comps to say this is how much a unit like this would rent for, everything included. It's really, really hard to find. So when I run the numbers, I always come up with a number of 3,500 a month, everything in, for 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath units,
And
which sounds like a lot.
well, are you comparing it sort of to a house?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to. In this case, I'd have to compare it to a house, but this would be at a very prime, high-end price point. And that's basically what we're looking at. So we would basically price out, I'd say 80% of the market with this number. Because most folks who want to live in a place like that probably can't afford the rent. That's what it looks like. And I mean,
Well, the people who can afford that kind of rent would probably ultimately want to buy.
and that's the other thing. So if you pay
Right.
that much in rent, you definitely don't want to just pay rent. You want to own it.
Yeah, and you know, this is the hard part, because you're talking about a unit of inventory that's
Mhm.
not movable. It's stuck where it is.
Yes.
And you have to figure out what the market will accept. I mean, I mean, it's clear what kind of people want to spend a week there in the summer, right? It's vacationers who want that
Correct.
oceanfront view. They want that Nova Scotia experience. They're going to go visit Peggy's Cove and places like that.
That's right.
For someone who's living there year round, what is it going to be? A family? Is it going to be a couple? Is it going to be somebody who's older? Are they going
Yes.
to be people that work in the city, or are they going to be retired?
Retirees. That would be our target market. Retirees who only live here six months of the year or less. And with the current situation, that's going to be 12 months, but that can change anytime, right? So based on that target market, it's hard to justify the price. So kind of minimizing the development might be a better option, and have our exit strategy built in with the purchase.
Well, let's put ourselves in the shoes of this imaginary person, right? So, or a couple who are, approaching retirement. They're professionals. Let's say they work in the city. They like to be about, this distance from town. They don't have to go into their office every day, let's say.
Mhm.
And so, what are their options? Like, if they were to buy their own place in that area on the water, what would they be looking at as far as buying? Would it be $1 million?
$750,000 right now, 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
Three-quarters of a million. And so
Yeah.
if they got a mortgage, what would they be paying every month? Between all of their overheads, the mortgage, property tax, etc.?
So just looking at that. For about $3,000 a month,
Yeah,
3,500.
right. So the people who might want to rent one of these from you, they're actually the same people, but maybe they don't know if they want to commit to that lifestyle. They don't know if they want to buy the place of their own yet. So they might sign a 1-year lease with you.
Okay.
As they get to know the area, get to know, because the amount that they're going to be laying out with you is going to be almost the same from a monthly cash flow point of view.
Correct. Yes.
Right. And a lot of those people are probably going to have money in the bank for maybe a home that they sold or something like that. But before they make that investment, they might want to dip their toe into that lifestyle. So then the question is, are there enough of them? Right. So I would be looking at how many of those types of $750,000 oceanfront properties are selling every year. Like, can you measure how much that market might be? Because not everyone who makes those purchases is going to be willing to rent for a while first, right?
That's true. Yes. So right now, as we all know, the short supply, lots of demand. So things sell within days,
Mm-hmm.
if not hours. So it shouldn't be a problem to attract buyers who are from away, BC, Ontario, and that would be basically the target market, I would say. And I think that would be easier to plan for and target than anyone locally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because somebody who grew up around there probably is going to have a hard time justifying spending that kind of rent.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah.
So target market.
From simply an asset point of view, the fact that it would be the replacement cost is 3 million and you can buy it for 2.2. I mean, there's an enticement there, isn't there? Sort of drawing you towards this as an opportunity. I brought up this topic before, speculation versus investment.
Yes.
And so because its current mode of operation doesn't really justify the price, then it leads me more down the road that you have to be thinking about this like you're almost it's like a new business startup. It's like because he's not renting them for $3,500 a month.
No, that's right.
What is he renting them for if we look at the peak season weekly multiplied by 4?
Just pulling the numbers here. So peak season is about 22. Almost 300. That's just main season, just for the summer season. That whole number is almost just for this 5.5 months.
Okay, but I'm trying to figure out, like, each unit, what is his weekly rental rate? Like, is he charging $2,000 per week in the summer, or?
Yes, that's about right. On average, that's
Okay.
correct. Yep.
So in the summertime on a weekly basis, he's getting 8,000 for each month of one of those cottages, right? Now it's a different product, right? It's a weekly rental. But if you were presenting to someone who wanted to sign a 12-month lease, like, do you know how motorcycle insurance is priced?
No.
So because the season is the summertime, if you buy motorcycle insurance in June and then try to cancel in September, thinking that you're only going to pay 1/4 of your annual bill, that's not how it works, because they prorate the amount over the course of, knowing that most motorcycles are rolling in the summer, right? So if we know that these things are worth 8,000 a month in the summer, and maybe we can say they're worth 1,500 in February,
Mhm.
right? But if we look at the value over the course of the year and then average that out, we'll probably be around that 3,500. And that would be part of how you present it.
Yes, that is a good way to do that. Thank you. Yes.
Right.
That is, yeah, that's actually very close to that. It's a bit more even, so that would work out really well. But yes, people get to enjoy it full time in the summertime, which is a discount, and then in the wintertime they're still saving the money because they're probably still getting an extra discount on top of the discount they get in the summertime.
Right. So if I was going to turn this into long-term rentals, I would actually not necessarily turn my back on the short-term people. I would offer them maybe on monthly terms,
Yeah,
but then tell and have different prices for the different months of the year. But then with a caveat that if you want to sign a 12-month lease, this is your monthly cost, and this is kind of the average cost.
that's a good idea.
Right. It's almost like you're introducing it like a financing plan to smooth out the cost over the course of the year. And if you have somebody who says, I just need, I'm, if you have an empty unit in November and someone wants it for 4 months, then you let them have it at the lower rate because, if you can't find someone willing to sign a 12-month lease. Are you familiar with like these furnished executive stay suite type
Yes,
of properties? Yeah.
yes, I am. Yeah.
In my mind, you might want to lean towards that kind of thing where, you might have someone who just wants it for the whole summer and they're willing to pay more than 3,500 a month.
That is a very good idea.
Yeah. But I think what we're talking about here is we're talking about creating a business plan for a very different style of business than what is there today.
Yes, that's
Right.
that. Yeah, we basically start from scratch, like you said, and because we can't show any revenue, and we don't have any contracts in place and no agreements in place with tenants, potential tenants. This is going to be an interesting exercise for sure.
But I think that because there are bookings for the summer, if you went and talked with a banker right now and said, we want to buy this property and this is our plan, and you
Mhm.
had your financial forecast and everything done out, and your plan was to change it from the weekly rental that is there today into this new format, the banker's not going to worry that you're going to miss your payments in the summer because there's already bookings there.
Okay. Yes.
Right. And so they may be open to this plan, especially if they're only lending you $900,000 against property with a replacement cost of $3 million.
Yes, that is
Right.
true.
So once you've completed your format change, and it may not take 5 years, you might be able to do this in 2 or 3,
Mhm.
then you could probably go back and refinance it and you'd probably have a higher value and you could pay out the vendor take back note.
Okay. Just taking some notes here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about finance, if you don't mind, then.
Sure.
From a bank perspective, if the appraisal comes in close to purchase price, let's say, and the vendor is willing to give us a vendor take back to purchase it. So that would be 2.2 appraisal. That is 65. No, 65%.
In your thing that you sent me, you were showing a $900,000 bank loan.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So 900 divided by 2,200 is only
Mhm.
41%. So
Mhm.
you're looking for the bank to finance 41% of the purchase.
Yes.
And so the bank is going to be concerned about the second. They want to make sure you can cash flow.
Mhm.
But from a security point of view, they're going to be very happy. They're not going to be afraid at all. From a cash flow point of view of understanding that you're able to make the payments, what you might expect them to do is to want some kind of postponement agreement with the seller. So for example, if you get to next winter and your revenues are down, the bank might want the option of being able to dictate that you don't make any payments to the seller until your cash flow improves.
Okay. So if revenue is down after next season though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like this is the kind of thing the banker might come back to you with.
Okay. And that would have to go onto the term sheet with the seller for the vendor take back.
Well, yeah, but not yet. So you make the offer subject to financing, then you go get the bank financing. And if the banker wants to put that kind of condition on you, then you have to come back to the seller.
Okay.
So good news, bad news. Good news, I got the loan. Bad news is they want you to agree to this condition.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing they might ask is they might want to see you have additional liquidity to make a couple of mortgage payments next winter.
Yeah. So we do have that.
Okay.
We are set up to do that with the home equity line of credit. So we are set up for any, that's basically our contingency. Ideally we put the least amount in just in case any other things come up. Running a cottage business is not cheap by any means,
Right.
and there's lots of repairs to contend with. So it's hard to plan or prepare for major expenses, as we learned with our own cottage rental. So we're very careful when it comes to that. So having a $50,000 to $100,000 contingency lying around somewhere is necessary in order to operate these businesses. We're already aware of that. So that's why the numbers never seem to work out, because we've never been able to build that contingency or pay out the seller in 5 years. Those things just never jive, because we never got past 450 over 5 years, and then we had to pay back $1 million. That just doesn't seem to be a good
Well, you wouldn't pay out the seller with cash. Like in a plan like this, the plan would be to refinance with the bank. So you buy the property, you operate it for a few years, and then as you approach that second mortgage balloon where you have to pay the $1 million, you refinance. See, if I was advising the seller, I would tell them not to do a 5-year with a full-on balloon. I would say put in some kind of contingency for amortization, because what the seller is doing is he's relying on you to qualify for credit in 5 years.
That
And
is correct.
we don't know what the world's going to look like in 5 years. We could have 10% interest rates. The market value of this property could be 1 million, like any number of things. And I mean, well, that's crazy, but the fact is, so is having a global pandemic. Like, who knows what could happen, right? So if I was advising him, I'd be saying, okay, interest only for 5 years, and then let's make it an amortizing note, so that if the buyer, if Egon can't come up with the money, at least there's a plan to get rid of the debt, even if we end up taking another 10 years. So I would be telling this guy, after 5 years, it goes from 2.75% to 6%, and with a 10-year amortization. Now you have to start making interest payments at a higher rate, and principal and interest blended payments. It certainly gives you an incentive to refinance it if rates are still low at that time. But if for some reason you can't get bank financing, at least you're not going to face foreclosure from him.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. So but you agree with the interest only for 5 years. Is that something you recommend?
Oh, I think it's great if you'll agree to it because it improves your cash flow situation.
Correct.
And I would also, is it open? Like, can you make principal payments at any time?
That's what I would want to negotiate. It'd have to be open and it'd have to be 5 years. Our interest rate, the max I'm willing to pay right now would be max 3%. And I hope to get at least, well, with the numbers I showed you, want at least half of the purchase price, right? I think it's $1 million. I put in there as a number for VTB. So I think that's a fairly reasonable number. I think any seller who sees and looks at their own numbers will know that that's actually not a bad deal
Yeah.
for them.
What I would suggest is that if you successfully change this into more of an executive stay kind of business, you would probably be able to refinance the whole property in the next couple of years. It would simply be a question of what rate is the bank offering you. And if it's higher than the 2.75 he's offered you, then you might want to keep his mortgage in place because it's a lower rate.
Okay.
But I mean, you're talking about decisions about how to best finance the operation. There's could be other considerations too. Like if rates are starting to rise at that time, you might choose to buy him out anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. But because you know that you're going to be radically changing this business and because you know you need to refinance before the end of 5 years because of the VTB, in your bank financing for acquisition, you probably don't need to go to a 10-year term. You can probably do a 5-year term because the 10-year term rates are certainly going to be higher.
Yes. So I only chose the 10-year because at current rates and not knowing what's going to come down 10 years or 7 years down the road, it would make it fairly safe to get a potentially lower interest rate. And if we plan the exit in 5-6 years down the road, we'd be able to hand that over to someone who can plan for the next 4 or 5 years that can take over the mortgage.
Right. But you have to refinance before 5 years to pay him out.
Yes, understood. Yep.
Right. So if a 10-year term interest is always going to be higher than a 5-year term.
Yes.
Because the bank's taking more risk, so they'll want a higher rate. So if you know you have to refinance in the next 5 years anyway, it may not make sense to take that 10-year term.
Okay.
Right. And you might even want to consider something shorter because you know that you only need a couple of years to change over into this new business format. And if it's successful, the value of the property will go up.
Understood. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So look at all those options.
Yeah, I think you need to make a cash flow forecast. And I think it needs to be monthly.
Yes.
Right. And figure out these scenarios. Yeah,
So
I mean, I think there's something here, but it definitely involves change.
Okay, so we're basically transitioning from a current cottage rental business into an executive stay business, and the change and the transition has to happen over the slow time of the year, just to ensure that we already have the cash flow for the summer or the main season to pay for the next year, let's say. And then as we transition, we change the business model to month to month or year to year, depending on what the cash flow forecast tells us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Thanks, Dave. That was a lot of great information.
Well, no problem. Thanks for helping me moodle through it with my thinking. But to me, it's a challenge because a lot of you're talking about an asset intensive business, and the asset price isn't being driven by cash flow. It's being driven by the fact that, neighboring properties are selling for these kinds of prices.
Correct. Yes.
So it's
But
definitely a
yes,
challenge.
that is the challenge. Yes. And, owners put a lot of money into to keep them in good shape, and that we can't unfortunately pay them for that. So
Right.
so it's very hard to justify any price above $1 million anyway. So it's really, really hard to come to decide on a business model. But this is great information. Thank you.
Cool. Well, if you do a deal, let me know and I'll come down and join you for a bonfire.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, Egon. Good luck. See you later.
Happy holidays.
You
Cheers.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.